Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I come today to the floor of the Senate to discuss an issue that is critically facing the American people, and it is the price of gasoline at the pump in this country. It is something that is, in my opinion, going to impact our economy, going to impact the economic recovery that we are all hoping would continue in this country. But with every penny that the cost of gasoline at the pump goes up, it's been estimated that that takes about $1 billion away from the amount of money that can be spent on other things in this country to get back to growing the economy. And we're at a point where the American people who have to balance their budget every year, states have to balance their budget. Of course, Washington doesn't do that, but the American people do, and they have to focus on their pocketbook, and when they're going to fill up with gas and noticing that they're approaching a point where it's going to be $100 to get a fill up, they worry about the impact on the quality of their life, their ability to put food on the table for their children, and clothing on their children, and even have the money to get back and forth to work, those fortunate enough to have jobs. And you say, well, is it really a problem? I believe it is, Mr. President. I filled up yesterday morning in Casper. A young man in front of me at the filling station, filling up his pickup truck. You know, he's watching the numbers go up and up and up. I filled up a week ago in Wyoming as well, and because we use a lot of gasoline in Wyoming, we travel long distances, and was filling up in the evening, put my credit card in, and it stopped at $75 because apparently they have to reset these things. And, you know, you'd think that with $75 at the time, you'd have enough money to fill up, but not as these gas prices continue to rise. And my concern is that so much of this money is being sent overseas to people who are trying to blow us up. We have an opportunity to be much more secure in our energy resources by developing our energy sources at home, and it just seems that this administration's policies are making it that much harder. You say, well, how high can gasoline prices go with the unrest in the Middle East? Front page story a few days ago, USA Today. It says if unrest spreads, gas may hit $5 a gallon. $5 a gallon by summer. You know, we need to do some things in this country that this administration has continued to block. We need to find more of our own energy, be reliant more upon ourselves and less upon foreign sources of energy. And that means doing three things: exploring offshore, exploring on federal land, and exploring in Alaska. We know there are huge reserves of oil, of energy in those locations, and yet day by day those efforts are being blocked. And the impact of this on our overall economy is huge, and it's because of policies of this administration. I mean, just today, the USA Today this morning, will gas prices stall the U.S. upturn? Consumers could cut spending again. It's not in the best interest of this country, Mr. President, for us to have energy policies that make it more expensive for Americans to fill up their cars. It does not help the economy of this country when we do things, when the policies of this administration do things that make it more expensive and harder for small businesses to create jobs and hire people. We're trying to get people hired back to work. That's what we need to focus on, jobs and the economy. And when the administration's policies cut into our ability to use energy sources from within this country, red, white, and blue energy jobs, red, white, and blue energy as well, and just send more money overseas, that doesn't help us as a nation. It doesn't help our economy. It doesn't help strengthen our communities. You know, we're so blessed in this country with wonderful families and wonderful communities and wonderful land, and yet we don't seem to be making wise decisions on a daily basis, Mr. President, with the policies coming out of this administration. Now, you know, it's interesting to see who is actually benefiting from all of this, these increased costs, because we know that the American families aren't benefiting. We know American taxpayers aren't benefiting. We know that people trying to get their kids off to school aren't benefiting. So who's benefiting from this huge increase in the cost of energy and the cost of oil? All you need to do is go to the front page of the business section of today's New York Times. Fears about Mideast oil pay off for Russia. For Russia, Mr. President. It says, whatever the eventual outcome of the Arab world's social upheaval, there is a clear economic winner so far, Vladimir Putin. Right there. That's the winner. Our policies, our economic policies of this administration to limit our ability and curtail our ability to use American energy, American oil to keep down the cost of gasoline is benefiting Russia. It says Russia, which pumps more oil than Saudi Arabia, is reaping a windfall from the steep rise in global energy prices resulting from instability in oil regions of the Middle East and North Africa. Now, Russia doesn't have any oil wells standing idle. Right now, Russia is pumping oil at its top capacity. So, in a country where we in the United States, and this Congress in particular, chooses winners and losers in energy, the winner seems to be Russia because of the policies of this administration. And, the Hill newspaper this morning, pump pain for Obama. This clearly lies specifically at the feet of the president because of the policies of this administration. Now, we've had a situation in the Gulf of Mexico, Mr. President, where there has been a moratorium which has extended almost permanently, shutting down the use of oil reserves for the United States. And the administration is so happy and pronounced that the moratorium have not until this week allowed for an additional permit, and finally won when the price of gasoline at the pump went up 38 cents on average to now about $3.50 per gallon. The Department of Interior last October, the Federal Register came out and they had a solution. They had actually some ideas about this because they admitted, the Department of Interior, the President's own Secretary of Interior and his department admitted that what they were doing in the Gulf of Mexico would have an impact. And it says the impact on domestic deepwater hydrocarbon production as a result of these regulations is expected to be negative. Well, what it means is it's going to cut down on American sources of energy. We need energy security, and we as a nation need to do it in an environmental responsible way, and we need to focus on economic growth. And this administration doesn't seem to be willing to make that distinction about energy security and economic growth and the needs that we have to help make our economy stronger. So what is the administration's position? What, as of October of last year, was their position on all of this to say, okay, we know that we're going to have impacts in the Gulf. They didn't say, oh, I know, we can go onshore and look on federal land. They didn't say, oh, let's go to Alaska to explore. No, this is this administration's position. They said, currently, there is sufficient spare capacity in OPEC, in the Middle East, to offset a decrease in Gulf of Mexico deepwater production that could occur as a result of this rule, the rule that they're going to shut down the Gulf. Therefore, the increase in the price of hydrocarbon products to consumers from the increased cost to drill and operate on the outer continental shelf is expected to be minimal. That's the administration's solution. They don't expect anything to happen. They're not worried about it. And if there's a problem, just buy more energy, more gasoline, more oil from OPEC, send more American dollars overseas. That's the administration's position. And what about the impact of that on our economy? Now, we do have a Secretary of Energy. You would think he'd be concerned about the cost of energy and the impact on American families. Well, not so, Mr. President, when you look at some of the statements that he's made. In the past, he said somehow we have to figure out how to boost the price of gasoline to the levels of Europe. That's the Secretary of Energy's proposal. Figure out how to boost the price of gasoline to the levels in Europe. Well, how much does gasoline cost in Europe? Well, about almost $8 a gallon. Now, the president, when he was a senator and running for president, he didn't seem to think that high energy prices were a problem. He just wanted the cost to go up gradually, he said. He thinks that the problem is when things go up too quickly. Mr. President, the American people who try to put bread on the table for the kids and clothing on their backs and get them off to school and then go to work themselves, they notice this. They know every time the cost of a gallon of gasoline goes up by a penny or a nickel or 38 cents as it has most recently. And the economy will suffer as a result. And it's specifically a result of the policies of this administration, the policies that ignore the need for American energy. And so, Mr. President, I think that at a time when we need to be focused on jobs in this country, that we need to realize the amount of uncertainty in the Middle East. There is now sticker shock at the pumps, and it is the policies of this administration that are the things that are keeping us from using it to develop the energy security we need. Thank you, Mr. President, and I yield the floor.